Joseph was the 11th son of Jacob, also known as Israel, and his mother was Rachel, Jacob's beloved wife. Out of all his sons, Jacob loved Joseph the most and made this clear when he gave him a special, multicolored coat, often called the coat of many colors. This favoritism caused a deep rift between Joseph and his 10 older brothers, who became extremely jealous of him. Joseph's dreams. Joseph, at the age of 17, began to have dreams that he believed were messages from God. In one dream, he saw sheaves of wheat in a field, and his brother's sheaves bowed down to his. In another dream, he saw the sun, moon, and 11 stars bowing down to him. Joseph's brothers were infuriated when he shared these dreams with them, as they interpreted the dreams to mean that Joseph would one day rule over them. The brothers' jealousy reached a breaking point. Joseph sold into slavery. One day, when Joseph was sent by Jacob to check on his brothers as they tended their flocks, the brothers saw him coming and plotted to kill him. However, Reuben, the eldest brother, convinced them not to kill Joseph but to throw him into a pit instead, planning to rescue him later. While Reuben was away, the other brothers sold Joseph to a group of Ishmaelite traders for 20 pieces of silver. The traders took Joseph to Egypt. To cover their tracks, the brothers dipped Joseph's special coat in goat's blood and showed it to their father, Jacob, who believed his beloved son had been killed by a wild animal. Jacob was devastated. Joseph in Egypt, from slave to prisoner. In Egypt, Joseph was sold to Potiphar, an official in Pharaoh's court and captain of the guard. Joseph was hardworking and trustworthy, and Potiphar soon put him in charge of his entire household. However, Potiphar's wife tried to seduce Joseph, and when he refused her advances, she falsely accused him of trying to assault her. Potiphar, believing his wife, had Joseph thrown into prison. Joseph in prison, the interpretation of dreams. Even in prison, Joseph found favor. The warden put him in charge of the other prisoners because God was with him, blessing everything he did. One day, 2 of Pharaoh's officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, were thrown into prison, and both had troubling dreams, interpreted their dreams accurately. Joseph, with God's help, the cupbearer would be restored to his position, but the baker would be executed. Joseph asked the cupbearer to remember him when he was released, but the cupbearer forgot him. Joseph rises to power. 2 years later, Pharaoh himself had 2 strange dreams. In one, 7 fat cows were eaten by 7 skinny cows. In the other, 7 healthy ears of grain were swallowed by 7 thin, withered ears. None of Pharaoh's wise men could interpret the dreams, but the cupbearer finally remembered Joseph. Pharaoh summoned Joseph from prison. With God's help, Joseph explained that the dreams were a warning of 7 years of plenty followed by 7 years of famine. Joseph advised Pharaoh to store up grain during the years of plenty, to prepare for the years of famine. Impressed by Joseph's wisdom, Pharaoh made him second in command over all of Egypt, placing him in charge of preparing the nation for the coming famine. The famine and Joseph's brothers, affecting not only Egypt but the surrounding regions. Just as Joseph predicted, the famine struck. Jacob sent his sons to Egypt to buy grain, including Canaan, where Jacob and his family lived, not knowing that Joseph was the one overseeing its distribution. When Joseph's brothers arrived, they did not recognize him, but Joseph recognized them. He tested them to see if they had changed, accusing them of being spies and demanding they bring their youngest brother. After some back and forth, the brothers returned with Benjamin back to Egypt. Joseph continued to test them by placing a silver cup in Benjamin's sack and accusing him of theft. When Judah, one of the brothers, offered to take Benjamin's place as a slave, Joseph was moved by this act of selflessness and revealed his true identity to his brothers. Joseph forgave his brothers for selling him into slavery. Reunion with Jacob, telling them that God had used their actions for good, to save many lives during the famine. He invited his entire family, including his father, Jacob, to come live in Egypt, where they would be provided for during the remaining years of famine. When Jacob arrived in Egypt, he was overjoyed to be reunited with Joseph, whom he had believed to be dead for so many years. Joseph's family settled in the land of Goshen, where they prospered. Conclusion. Joseph's legacy. Joseph's life was marked by faithfulness to God in both hardship and success. Despite being betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, Falsely imprisoned and forgotten, he remained steadfast in his trust in God. His forgiveness of his brothers demonstrated his understanding of God's sovereignty, recognizing that what they intended for harm, God had used for good. Joseph lived to be 110 years old, and his story is remembered as one of faith, resilience, and redemption. His family grew into the nation of Israel, and the stage was set for the eventual exodus from Egypt under Moses' leadership.